episode of the Star Sitdown. My name is Kim Davis Jr., the podcast editor of the Star, and we have a very, very special guest. He is the artist in residence at the Texas State Theater and Dance. He is the artistic director at the Black and Latino Playwright Celebration. He's appeared in over 200 works from theater to film, in addition to his writing credits. I'm pleased to welcome Mr. Eugene Lee. How are you doing, Mr. Lee?
I'm all right, man. It's good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Too. It's good to see you too. Well, I gave you that little brief introduction. Can you talk a little bit more about, your career and how you got started, and just give the audience a little bit more about yourself?
Oh, wow, man. You should never ask an actor to talk about himself unless you got nothing but time on your hands, if you know what I mean. No, man, the brief history, the Reader's Digest condensed version of it is I came to Southwest Texas State University in 1970 as a young 16-year-old freshman, and I left here headed to be an attorney. I was a political science major, but in the 4 years I was here, that changed. I became a double major, political science and theater, and I got involved in theater. I taught high school in Fort Worth, Texas. For like 4 years after that, I worked a bunch in Dallas doing theater, doing movies, as an extra in movies. I worked in the first 5 episodes of the TV series Dallas back in the mid 70s as an extra, because they shot those in Dallas. And I eventually got a part. Actually, I got accepted in 1 week in the spring of 1978. I was teaching high school in Fort Worth, and working in radio in Dallas and doing that kind of stuff. And I had applied for law school, and in 1 week, I swear, I got a letter of acceptance to South Texas Law School. I got a letter of acceptance to SMU's MFA program in acting in Dallas. I got a letter of acceptance into NYU in New York University's MFA acting program, and I got a part in a movie. A guy named Ron Howard, who you may have heard of, a director. The very first thing that he ever directed was a TV movie called Cotton Candy, which was shot in Dallas. And he cast me in 3 roles, and I played a high school student. And I was a high school coach and teacher and stuff, because I was young. But I resigned from teaching, and took 6 weeks to shoot that movie, and then I packed everything I had and moved to Los Angeles. And that's when things jumped off. That's when I said, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. And I worked in some TV shows called The White Shadow and Good Times. You may remember some of those. And from there, the following year, I went to New York and did a bunch of work in New York. I worked on The Guiding Light for a couple of years, but I also got involved with the Negro Ensemble Company in New York and Crossroads Theater Company in New Jersey, and got involved in Black theater. And that's been the lion's share of a lot of my work. I worked with August Wilson, if you know that name, and involved in a number of his plays. And movies, I guess the last thing I did a play on Broadway with Kerry Washington and Jeremy Jordan and Stephen Pasquale called American Son, which is now a Netflix movie, as a matter of fact. If you ain't got nothing to do, I insist that you go check it out. It's called American Son, and it's a really important film. We were nominated for an Emmy this past year. We didn't win, but it's a really important, great film. And this COVID shut everything down since then. So I'm just sitting here twiddling my fingers, working in my garden, trying to hope we get back to work real soon.
No, I definitely feel you. It's been tough making that transition to digital, and unfortunately, I'd love to have you in a studio and talk to you face to face, but hopefully we'll get to where we need to be. It's been a year, we're making some strides, so all we can do is really hope. But I wanted to dive a little bit more. It was very fascinating to me how you got started in acting, and you've said it numerous times yourself. Somebody told you were good at it, and you just kept on doing it. And from what I understand, and you please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, you were part of the integration of your high school, correct?
Yeah, we were the first ones in there, man, 1967. Pascal High School in Fort Worth, yeah.
And didn't the theater director called you to play a part, and you didn't want to do it. You're like, I don't really want to do it, but the director said something, and it was very interesting to me, especially when considering the time. She had said to you, well, either you do it or we'll cast a whiteboard to do it and put him in blackface. Is that what happened?
Pretty much, yeah.
So so when that happened, and in the start of your career, in that specific encounter, were you just like, well, I really don't want that to happen. I'll give it a shot. And then from there, was it that teacher who told you that you were really good at it, and that's really what got you to keep going?
Yeah, she was one of the ones that definitely said that to me. In fact, the following year, because that was my junior year in high school, I guess. So my senior year in high school, I got back in her class.
Mm-hmm.
It's because when I got in that class, I really found some kindred spirits there, man. It was, as the first Black people in that school, there was shit going on, if you know what I mean. It was them white people didn't want us over there, and we knew that. And it took some bravery, it took some conniving and stuff on our part. We didn't go to the bathroom by ourselves. There were protocols that we had in place, to take care of ourselves and take care of each other, if you know what I mean, because it's just a handful of us over there with all these white people, and that there were challenges. I'll just say it like that. And but when I got in her class, it was about the play. It wasn't about anything else, if you know what I mean. And so I got back in her class again the next year, and she cast me as a white character in a play, which was something else that she had never done before. So yeah, we both learned something from that experience. And that was the start of my interest in theater in a way. I mean, I had done a play in junior high school, yeah, but I was going to be a lawyer. I was hell bent to be president of the United States at one point. So but it did work out. It did work out fine for me and that drama teacher, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually was in an audition a few years later, man, in Los Angeles. I was in a producer's office, and I had an audition with him, and I sat in his office. God, I sang something. I want to say, I can't remember what the show was, but we started talking, and he realized where I was from and what school I went to. Damned if he didn't go to the same school. Damned if he didn't know that white teacher. Damned if he didn't pick up his phone and call her and say that he was sitting across the table from me, and she remembered me, and we talked, he put her on the speakerphone, we talked. I didn't get that job, but once again, that white lady just kept showing up in my life,
Mm-hmm.
if you know what I mean, in an interesting kind of way, and involving theater and involving acting and the stuff that I'm doing. So yeah, that's that story in a nutshell.
So, and another thing you touched on it, which is something that fascinated me as well, is you've spoken a bit about you being you initially went to college with pre-law, correct? And you minored in drama, and you really wanted to become the president of the United States. And I was curious because your father was a farmer, correct? And was that because did your father being a farmer and the times and, you being a big part in integration of your high school, was that why you wanted to become the president of the United States so badly?
You mean directly related to my father?
No, I mean just like an amalgamation of those things and like integrating your high school and being, from Fort Worth, Texas. And I was just very fascinated at your ambition and really wanting to push towards being the president.
I wanted to change America, man. And I grew up in Texas. I saw those signs that said colored only. I saw those signs that said white only. And I've been stopped on my bicycle a time or two by some white guys that pushed me off, get assaulted in those kinds of ways. So I wanted to do what I could to be a part of that change. Dr. King was killed while we were doing that play when I was in high school. John F. Kennedy was killed when I was in sixth or seventh grade, something like that. So that almost turned me off from wanting to be president, because I figured I'd be definitely in everybody's crosshairs, if you know what I mean. But yeah, I wanted to change America. I wanted to be a part of the change of America, which was one of the reasons why I tried to get the hell out of Texas as soon as I could, because I just felt like there was this lid on what I was able to do. It was only so far I could go, if you know what I mean, in terms of rising and and thriving. But yeah, I wanted to change the world. Now I do it with my art.
That's beautiful. I think that's really what it's all about. And I'm happy that you were able to find that outlet, especially at a young age, and you never stopped. You've spoken a bit about how you were able to just keep on doing it, and how fortunate you are to have the career that you've had. And I wanted to ask you about the beginning of that career and that transition from teaching in high school to going to LA. So you were able to do the film with Ron Howard, correct? And then you moved to LA, and you were in LA for about a year, right? So how was that transition going from, teaching high school just to going full on in and moving out there and trying to book gigs?
Well, I saved my money, so I had a little stash, if you know what I mean. I'd sent some money ahead and got an apartment. I had a fairly new car that was reliable. There are things that you have to have as an actor. I say to actors, and somebody probably said it to me before I went out there, that have some money, be able to survive without working for as long as you can, because you don't know when you're going to get your first or whatever acting job. But as it turned out, my second week there, I was doing an episode of Good Times. But I went prepared, if you know what I mean. I went as prepared as I could be,
Mm-hmm.
all things considered. And but you get there, and within that year, I had backups. What did I do? I did 3 episodes of The White Shadow. I did Good Times. I did The Dating Game. That's right. Oh God, I forgot I did that. But I was, knock on wood, I was fairly fortunate. But I also was good. I think that makes a difference too. Um, uh, so I had some success, and but I also had a backup. In between gigs, I was a substitute teacher. In between gigs, I drove a beer truck for a distributing company in Los Angeles. In between gigs, I worked at an answering service, answering people's phones, and taking messages and stuff for them. So survival skills, man. I took those with me as well. I had an old lady tell me once, lady I bought a used car off of years later. She said to me, keep some money coming in. Keep some money coming in, because if you got money in your pocket, you feel good about yourself. If you ain't got no money and your rent's late, and the phone's turned off and you ain't got no gas in your car, and that's just depressing, man. And if you take that into an audition, ain't nobody gonna hire that. Don't nobody want to work with that. But if you go in confident and feeling good about yourself, then that's the kind of stuff that gets jobs for you. So it's those kinds of dynamics and survival hustler skills that they come to bear if you're an actor, and you got to find a way to thrive. So that's what that first year was like. Yeah.
And then after that, you made the transition from LA to New York, and you lived in New York for 10 years, right?
Yeah,
Over a decade.
yeah, something like that. Yeah. I went there to stay 10 days
Wow.
to visit my family in New Jersey, where
Hmm.
I hadn't been, since I was a little bitty thing, right? And on the 10th day, I was shooting a ragu spaghetti sauce commercial up in upstate New York. So, and it was one of those tickets where, oh God, what were those tickets? I think I paid $100 for it. I think it was, I won't even say it was legal or illegal or whatever, but it was one of those cheap tickets, those round trip Woodard to Kennedy from LA. It was like, that I could afford, but I couldn't get a refund on it, to go back. But I was like, well, hell, I'm shooting a commercial. I'll make some money to be able to buy another ticket back. Man, it was 8-10 years before I got back to LA. Because I ended up doing the first 6 months I was in New York, I did 6 national commercials.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
That's
staying with my sister, helping her out, and my nephew, and I eventually moved into New York,
hmm
uh, and gave up my apartment in LA. Had to send my cousin out there to get my stuff and stuff. So, yeah, so that transition happened. God has always put me where I was supposed to be. It's like my grandmother used to say, you want to make God laugh? Get a plan.
I like that. I like that a lot.
You know, because you can think you know what you're doing. But for most of my life, he's been like, no, 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 bring your ass over here. Yeah, come do this play, or come do this movie, or come teach this class, or whatever. And they've always led to something new, or some new experience, or some new wisdom, if you know what I mean.
That actually is a great transition point to another thing that I was curious about because you've spoken a lot about your involvement with the Negro Ensemble company, and I had done a little bit of research prior, and I just wanted to know how you got started with them and how that really got you hooked on the theater scene in New York City.
I first met Douglas Turner Ward, who just passed last week, as a matter of fact. I first met him when I was teaching high school in Fort Worth at Polytechnic High School. One of those, remember I said I was accepted in the SMU's MFA acting program?
Hmm.
But once I got accepted, uh, Doug came down from New York to direct a play, to direct a production of a play called The River Niger, which the Negro Ensemble Company had done. And because I was about to become they thought I was about to become a student, a grad student at SMU, and they didn't have any black students, if you know what I mean, and they needed to accommodate what he was coming. They had some women and stuff, but they brought me in, and I worked with Doug. It must have been a week, 10 days or something, working on that play at SMU. And I heard later that he went back to New York and told the people at the Negro Ensemble Company, yeah, I met a real actor down there in Texas, right? And I never knew that until after I got there years later, because that had to be the mid 70s, 70, 77, 70, when I was teaching high school. And I didn't get there to meet him until 80 or something like that when I met him, 79, 80. And uh, did I audition for? I auditioned for a couple of things for him, but he remembered me. He remembered me from having worked with me in Texas. And one of the first plays I auditioned for him for was a play called Zoo Man and the Shine. And an actor named Giancarlo Esposito got that role. And Doug said to me at the time, he said, "No, you're too Southern." Because this character that play takes place in Brooklyn or someplace like that. And I was like, man, I ain't no actor for nothing. I don't have to be Southern if I don't want to be. He basically was saying, just chill out, little monkey. I'm gonna put you to work. Don't worry about it. And then he cast me to understudy Samuel L. Jackson in a touring company of a play called Home. It had just left Broadway. Sam didn't do it on Broadway. A guy named Charlie Brown did it on Broadway. And Sam was doing the Southern tour, bus and truck. And Doug hired me to understudy Sam. And I got down to North Carolina to meet them. They had already left. I walk in Sam's dressing room, and he looked at me and said, "Yeah, man, yeah, my brother, welcome aboard." He said, "You ready?" I was like, I had never seen the play.
Hmm.
I'd only read the play to audition for it, right? The 2 days before. And I walk in his dressing room, he's like, "Yeah, man, you ready?" I said, "For what?" He said, "Because in 2 weeks, it's yours." I was like, "What?" Nobody tell me that. And it turned out that it didn't happen. He had a Broadway play called Innocent Black and Her Five Brothers that he was going back to Broadway to do. And he was only going to, that's one of the reasons they hired me, because he was going to be leaving, and then I would do the bus and truck and he'd go back to the Broadway show. Well, it turns out they turned the Broadway show into a musical or something. And he said, "No, I ain't doing that." So he and I stayed as his understudy on the tour, and we were out on a bus and truck, man, getting on the bus, going from one Holiday Inn to another one, in North Carolina, South Carolina, in Atlanta, in Louisville, Kentucky, and Minneapolis. It's just a bus and truck. It was like your basic touring company, and staying in Holiday Inns, because I remember we were saying, hell, I got the same room. They could have just moved the room I was in before. It wasn't even funny. And that was my introduction to the Negro Ensemble Company in that respect. And Sam and I shared that role a lot, man. A lot of times I do the matinees and he'd do the evening shows. He'd come to my understudy rehearsals. He'd be stealing shit from me. But we got really tight, and we get back to New York, and Doug cast us in a play called A Soldier's Play, with Denzel Washington and Brent Jennings and a whole slew of 12 men 12 Men, and that play won the Pulitzer Prize. That play ran for 2 years in New York. It was the hottest ticket in New York. It went on to become a movie. Not all the actors in the play made it to the movie, but that's a whole nother story that I ain't gonna talk about because the hair on the back of my neck stands up when I talk about it. And hell, I did every play that the Negro Ensemble Company did for the next 3 seasons.
Wow.
Or for 4 seasons, because 2 of the seasons was Soldier's Play. That was all they did for 2 seasons. And after that, I did every play that they did for the next 2 seasons after that.
And then a season is about a year for those who don't know.
Yeah, usually it's 4 plays or so.
Okay.
But not a year. They usually run from like September to the summer.
Okay, understood.
Yeah.
Understood. And did you stay with the Negro Ensemble Company for your whole duration in New York, and you were able to book work through them, or?
I mean, I worked for them.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
when I was doing those plays with them for those 2 seasons, yeah, I mean, we'd be rehearsing the next one while we were doing the one that we just finished rehearsing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was a company. So I was a member of the company for those 2 years. Prior to that, I was with Crossroads Theater Company in New Jersey when they were brand new, another Black theater company that's just trying to make a comeback now. They were, when I joined them in 1979 or something like that, because this was before I went to NEC. They were in my hometown in New Jersey. That's where they were. That's where they were founded and still are. Yeah, I was with them. They were a CETA program. Do you remember CETA? Why would you remember CETA? CETA, the Comprehensive Employment Training Act. It's a government program.
No, I'm not familiar.
No, it's no longer in existence. But it was a government program that funded artists, and they funded this particular theater. And I was a part of their company, one of the actors in their company. So I did every play they did as a part of the company for a season and a half. And after that half season came, that's when Doug called me about doing that other play. So yeah, I've been in Black theater, man. I love working in Black theater because it's for us, it's about us, and it's by us. And I think that gives it some authenticity, that anything that doesn't have those elements lacks. It's great when not just the playwright, not just the director and the actors and the stage manager, but the box office people, the ushers, the designers, the company management, the administration and staff and stuff, are all people are kindred spirits. It's great. It's like family,
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And it makes me have a sense of pride because, in doing research, I had, such a very minimal understanding, and I wanted to ask you about it. And it sounds like it was a place, like you said, for us, by us, about us, that, a bunch of talented and people who wanted to work were able to come together and make, art that, even non-Black people and people of color could relate to. Correct.
Very correct. And it's important. And that's a very important aspect of what the Negro Ensemble Company did in terms of teaching other people about, or giving them insight into our culture, if you know what I mean, which is very healing in terms of there are cultural gaps that are happening and that have always been happening in the United States for whatever reason, and the world for that matter. But to bridge those, there's gotta be some sharing, and it's gotta be honest and truthful sharing, because so much of our history has been changed, altered, or whatever. And that's what I mean when I say us documenting our condition here, people like August Wilson, people like Doug, people like myself, it's authoritative. We have the authority to tell these stories and to tell them with truth and to tell them with clarity. And the mainstay of all the work that Douglas Turner Ward got out of us and instilled in us with the Negro Ensemble Company it was about excellence. Growing up in Texas, I was always told, I come from teachers. My grandmother was a teacher, my aunt was a teacher. But I was always told back in what I call the BI days, before integration, that as a black person in these United States, that I was gonna have to do 300% just to get noticed. Anything short of that was gonna be bullshit to them, right? So that's the work ethic that was beat into my behind, from the time I could walk, if you know what I mean. They had me reading the Bible when I was 5 and stuff, but it was about making me that one that they were gonna send out to be a credit to his race. You know, that's who I was. I was that little cute curly head boy over there that was smart, and because I wanted to go to the all black school, and high school. My folks were like, no, you're gonna get on that bus and you're going over there. So I was like shoved on out there, but I didn't mind. I was excited about the prospect. So, and then I get over there and I realize I'm smarter than most of these white folks.
And I'm curious now that we're speaking about the importance of Black art and telling stories. So, is that a big reason why you came back to your alma mater, formerly Southwest Texas State, now Texas State, to become an artist in residence and work and contribute as the artistic director of the Black and Latino Playwright Celebration?
Yeah, they sort of invited me back, if you know what
Okay.
I mean. I would come back over the years. I guess you achieve even a minor level of notoriety out there in the world. Some professional nod of approval from out there in the world. And the head of the theater department over the years would invite me back to come back and do master classes, master acting classes, and I would come back and share the shit that I've learned. It's I come from teachers, and I consider myself a teacher in many ways. I just like to think I got a bigger classroom if I'm doing a movie than if I've got just a classroom of stuff. But I'd always come back, and then they called me and they asked me if I'd be interested in, if I could, or if I would come in for Black History Month to direct one of my plays. And I said, well, okay, what's your budget? And he laughed. I was like, oh, you ain't got no budget. You want me to do this for free? It's like, there's a word for when you work for nothing for free. It's called slavery. I said, no, I'm not going to come down here for a month and drop everything I'm doing in Los Angeles with my work, my family, and everything, to come help you. I love you, but it ain't that, help me out here, meet me halfway. So I said, I'll come down for a week and I'll direct a reading of one of my plays with some students, right? Now, when I came to school here in 1970, it was kind of like that high school I was in. There were like 4 of us in the drama department, I think. And there weren't more than 100 of us or so on campus at that time, right? So, where was I headed with that? It was, now I remember. So when I was in the theater department back in the 70s, it was 3 of us, right? I came back 20, 30 years later to direct one of my plays in a reading. It's 3 of them. Wasn't enough to do my play. I went off. I was like, 30 years, y'all ain't changed. 30 years. The school is 10 times the size it was. The theater department is 10 times the size it was. But it's still 3 of us. That's it. What y'all doing? This ain't important to y'all. What's the deal? Well, how are you recruiting? Why? And I went off. I pitched a conniption. We went up to Austin and found actors that I knew. Went across campus to, it's just 4 people in the damn play. We had to find some, and we did the reading of it. It was a huge success. It's a great play. It's been done in a lot of places. And I went on back to California. And about 2 weeks later, the president and the chairman of the theater department called me up. Said, you made us lose sleep. I said, good. They said, are you willing to do anything to help? And I was like, oh shit, here we go. Here we go. I gotta be the Lone Ranger. And I said, well, what do you mean? They said, well, would you be willing to serve as artistic director for the Texas State Black Theater Festival? And big question that I asked was next. I said, well, what is that? And they said, whatever you want it to be, Eugene. That was enough for me. It's like, oh, okay. Even though they didn't put any money on it, but you know, it wasn't about the money for me at the time. It was about giving back as best I could. So yeah, I did it, and they eventually made an offer for an actual job as artist in residence. So I got the best job on campus. You know.
Can you explain to people more about like what that means in terms of being an artist in residence and your role in the department?
Yeah, my basic responsibilities are I act in or direct a play every other year. I run the Playwright conference, you know, the Black and Latino Playwright Celebration. The name is Celebration now, not conference. And I write a couple of grants every year. So I've gotten like 3 NEA grants, NEH grant, Texas Humanities. I've done a bunch of that kind of stuff. You know, I also was a celebrity host for a celebrity golf tournament that the university used to host for many years. That was responsible for raising. We raised over 10, 15 years of doing that. You know, I'd bring people down like Samuel L. Jackson. I'd bring my partners down, you know, to play some golf, to be the celebrities, and other people too. And they established over $1 million scholarship for graduate students.
Oh, okay.
Through that golf tournament. The Celebrity Classic is what they used. It was the biggest fundraiser that the university had for years, and they eventually canceled it. And that's a whole nother story that I won't go into. But you know, that just freed me up so I can go do Broadway, make more movies and stuff. But that was one of my responsibilities, was to do that, which happened first week in May every year. So yeah, and as artists in residence, I've been responsible for bringing money to this university on a couple of levels, and for bringing some diversity to this university. If you know what I mean, you know, trying to add more raisins to this bowl of white rice. Especially in that theater department, man. We're working on it.
Right.
We're working on it, but it looks like a early snowfall up in there most of the time.
um, and
But you know,
what? I'm
I
sorry.
also no, just the other thing that's important to me is to attack that moment of only 3 of us in that drama department. You know, it's like time for that to change. It's and you know, and I think that has changed in the time that I've been here. The number of African American students and Latino students that are in that that are in that theater department has grown exponentially in the last 15 years or so, 17 years. So however long we've been doing this BLPC thing.
And I was gonna ask you, pardon me interrupting you prior. I was just gonna ask you, how has it been working with young students, and especially Black and Latino students, and getting able to see their growth and progression? How has that been for you as
It's
a
exciting, man.
educator?
It's exciting as a teacher, or you know, it's like you see your mentees, you see the light go off, if you know what I mean. You see them learn, you see them grow, and I see myself when I was that age, if you know what I mean. That you know, hungry. You know, hungry. Tell me what you know. You know, help me out here. Point me in the right direction. You know, that kind of stuff. It's and to share the craft. You know, and to be able to touch. You know, because I've had some students, yeah, come to me and say, I want to pick your brain, and I'm like, okay. That's why I have a brain. But you know, what do you want? You know, and this one brother, very talented brother. When my first year here, young, really gifted, talented brother. He sat down with me in Jason's Deli, and he said, "I want to be Denzel Washington." I said, "No, you don't." I said, "There are days when Denzel don't want to be Denzel Washington. So let's back up a little bit. How about starting with trying to be the best you that you can be? Because you don't know Denzel's story. You don't know what it cost him to get to where he is. You know what I'm saying? All you see is the results. And all I hear you saying is you want to make a lot of money, and that's an objective, but you can do that selling drugs. You know, it's about why you do things. It's those kind of things that I like to talk to people about. Things done for the right reason are gonna pay off tenfold. You know, I do believe that. I do believe that. But you can be a flash in the pan, make a quick $100,000 this year, and then people will be wondering who the hell you are in 5 years, if you know what I mean. And when you get into this business, you're competing against people who have degrees. You're competing against people who have studied this craft. You're competing against people who are in this for a whole different reason, if you know what I mean. And not just for the results. Because there's more to a play than just what you see opening night. There have been 4 weeks of rehearsal, 8 hours a day that went into making that happen. And you can't just bypass that aspect of it and only go straight to what you think looks great, the glamour and the lights and money and stuff like that. So it's opening, being able to, not every professor at this university or any university has had the kind of professional experience that I've had, if you know what I mean. That's walk the walk, as well as talk the talk. So I bring a different level of experience, a different perspective on the professional world that, I'm an old high school coach too. When I taught high school, I was a coach too. I was a tennis coach and basketball coach, football coach, and I did pretty much everything but drive the bus. But, I come from that too. And I come from that work ethic that says, I laugh and joke, but I don't play. This is serious to me. And if it's worth doing, it's worth doing right.
I completely agree. I come from a background of I was in band a lot of high school, and it's kind of like that work ethic that you were talking about. And in college, I've noticed that a lot of people don't have that. And you've spoken in a previous in something prior, a different podcast about people didn't show up on time, and they were done. And then they had to learn the hard way. And and I think coming from that type of background where it's like organizational discipline, taking pride in what you do, be on time, work for the betterment of the group, I think that's really powerful. And I think you are also very correct in that you have to try and be the best you can be. That's something my mother has told me my whole life. And hearing you say it, I have a deeper level of understanding in that what that means, because I also understand what you're saying in that it's easy to look at the results and forget about the struggle, and you have to be in it for the right reasons. So you've definitely changed my perspective in that way, and I have definitely a deeper level of understanding than I did beforehand. So I'm thankful about that. I just wanted to acknowledge that because it was very deep. I like that. I like that a lot.
Oh man, I go deep. I ain't scared. Because why not? If I can make you a bigger person, which I might have just done, then I pat myself on the back or whatever. As on a teaching tip, I'm a teacher at heart. I really, really am. I come from teachers. And I think in terms of, you probably heard me say this before too, in terms of why we're here as human beings, I think our job, the Bible says we're here to bear witness. Somewhere it says that, I don't know where. But I take that a step further. It's not just to bear witness, but to share the witness that we bear. I mean, I jokingly say, what if the guy who discovered fire kept it to himself? We'd be some cold folks up in here now, you know what I'm saying? But that's how mankind has progressed, by sharing what he's learned or she's learned, and then adding to it and then sharing that. So that body of knowledge has grown because of teaching. If you're a Christian, Jesus Christ was known as rabbi, which is what? Teacher. It's our responsibility to teach our students, to teach our children, and children teach their parents too. That kind of, those exchanges continue to happen. So yeah, I'm a teacher at heart. Yeah, it's yeah. Somebody once said the last dictators on earth are college professors.
um, I also wanted to get your perspective on this last thing. So, as somebody who's had such a long career, over 50 years, 40 years in the business and doing so many productions, how have things changed from your perspective? And I believe you've stated when you started your career in acting, you would do roles for, Thug Number One, Gangbuster Three, or nameless characters. And now seeing a lot more diversity and companies push for diversity in productions. How would you say things have changed from your point of view and your career for minorities and specifically Black and Latino playwrights, actors, and talented individuals?
We're in the game now, man. I work for a prime example is my roommate from college, a guy named Thomas Carter, who was on the White Shadow, and I worked with him on the White Shadow. There are people I worked with like Kevin Hooks on the White Shadow. Those guys, they didn't just act in those TV series. They learned directing. They started directing other TV series. A bunch of guys like myself also started writing TV series. So we're leaving a footprint in this business, and it's that authoritative footprint, if you know what I mean. And as things are changing, you look at what uh, Regina
King?
King. Yeah, thank you. Have you seen Night in Miami?
I have not.
Whoa, don't miss it. That woman, I remember her when she was a little girl on room two on 22227 or whatever it was, that TV series that she was on. But now she's the hottest directing item that's happening in Los Angeles, and she's telling Black stories, man. The Watchmen, and she's producing and so that's the kind of shit that I'm watching happen in this business. That's given a whole new value to our stories, if you know what I mean, as things change. Uh, 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 yeah, that's what Denzel is another prime example. I mean, we all kind of knew way back then that we couldn't just be actors as Black actors, because actors are the last ones hired and the first ones let go when things are done. And I realized that it's also about ownership, man, in this business. Because the plays that I have written have value. When somebody does my play in London, Germany, South Africa, wherever, they gotta send me some money. I own that. That's intellectual property. But now, this acting stuff, a lot of times you go do a play, they do that play forever, but you don't get any more money from it, if you know what I mean. As an actor, if I wrote the play, then yes, that's the whole nother story. So ownership of intellectual property, I always saw as a way of assuring longevity in this business, a way of keeping some money coming in, like that old lady told me back in the day. Different streams of income, residual checks. Man, I've worked in probably just shy of 300 different movies and TV shows over the years. And, residuals come for those things, you know. So it's a whole different stream of income that exists with past things that I've done in terms of having value. So we're in the game now, I guess is what I see in terms of how things have progressed. The types of roles have become more culturally specific, or other roles that are not culturally specific have been opened up for us, where we would never have been had been considered for them, if you know what I mean. I get auditions now, Zach Scott and other places, to play roles that are traditionally written as white. So those kinds of changes I do see happening, but it ain't over yet, man. There's still inklings of old school stuff that's out there, if you know what I mean. I mean, just look at the raid on the Capitol. Just look at white supremacists and white nationalists in America that will do everything they can to perpetuate the lie. And I ain't talking about just the election, but that lie of white supremacy, that they're better than anybody else, that they're going to live and die by that. So that impacts everything else, if you know what I mean. It's 75 million of them. That ain't a number to be shaking your head at, dog. That's they don't care about us. That's very clear. So, there's still that pushback that's happening. Um, but, it may be too late. It's too little too late. They're scared to death. They're about to be outnumbered, you know, and they're scared to death that they're going to be treated as a minority the way they treated minorities when they were the majority. That's, and fear is a motivating mother for you, if you know what I mean. And, but this ball is rolling downhill now.
And what would you say to a young Black artists who are watching and who would like to have a career as successful and as long as yours?
Um, don't be scared. I think that's the best advice I can give anybody. Don't be scared. It's yours. Claim it. Because I think I see a lot of actors who graduate from this theater department, that are talented. Then they go back to Houston or they go back to El Paso and they get a job working in Costco, you know, and they got to pay rent and they're paying the rent and they never get back to what that dream was, because they're scared. They're scared they're not gonna make it. You don't go to they're like, oh man, I want to go to New York or I want to go to LA and I hear them say try to make it. And see that's it's subtle, but when you say I want to go try to make it, it's different than when you say I'm going out there and I'm gonna spend the rest of my life doing this. I'm gonna make it. It's a subtle perspective. But if you're clinging on trying to make it, then no. Let's get on top of that. Let's go beyond that. Let's go out there determined, to succeed, to do whatever it takes to succeed. You know what I'm saying? And to not abandon a dream. That happens to far too many people. But it's kind of like culling the herd. If you've heard that expression, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it ain't for everybody. If you know what I mean. Just because you want it, don't mean it's yours. And it ain't yours just because you want it. It does take some work and investment of time, work. And I always throw this in too, man. I was in New York one time, in between gigs. I never went more than 3 months without a job in New York, which is, that's rare. That's fucking rare. That didn't. I mean, I know people that it happened with other than myself, but I was fortunate. I was also good. Uh, what was I gonna say? But that's what happened. I called my dad up, and I was crying. The rent was due. They were gonna turn my phone off, and this, I ain't had a job in 2 months, and da da da. And unemployment ain't there's never enough money or whatever. And he said, "Man, what the hell you crying for?" He said, "You ain't gonna starve. You fed too many people." I said, "You smiled." Because that's the same thing I did. He just brought me back, man. My father had an eighth grade education, and his mother was the teacher in the colored school down in East Texas. So that he didn't come from no college degree. He didn't come. He came straight to the bone. He got straight to the bone. You ain't gonna starve. So what the hell you worried about? And he reminded me, you fed too many people. Ain't nobody in the world gonna let you starve. And when you can shove off fears, stick your chest out, and go on with your life, if you know what I mean, and find some new challenge to rise above. It's that's when I call people like my dad the wind between my wings. Shit that kept me up. You know what I mean? Because they're gonna be lining up out there to knock your ass down. There's a line of people waiting, some of them with weapons and things to knock you down. And, it's the preparation that you bring into that I think makes a difference for a lot of people. I hope that made sense.
It made an abundance of sense, and I'm really grateful to have you on, Mr. Lee. This has been a pleasure.
Yeah.
This has been a pleasure hearing about your career and your opportunities. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm really thankful. We're gonna wrap up here. Is there anything that you would like to announce that's coming up soon, or any works that you have going on? I know middle of pandemic, but if there's anything you would like to plug, we could get a link or.
Well, yeah, it's down the road a piece, but I'm just pulling together one of my plays is It was nominated for a Pulitzer Prize back in 1980. Yeah, and it was done we did it first in Los Angeles. It's published by Samuel French. It was done in New York at the Public Theater. It won the Adelco Best New Play Award in New York off Broadway. It was done in London, the Royal Court. It's done somewhere all over America, since then, every year. It's a really popular and well-received play. But I'm just closing the deals now to bring some partners of mine on board, and we're going to make the movie version of it.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And what's it called?
It's called East Texas Hot Links. Look it up.
East Texas Hot Links. I sure will. I'm looking forward to that. I'm really excited.
Yeah. It's a good little play. I got Samuel L. Jackson on board as executive producer. He's going to actually do one of the roles. Kenny Leon is going to direct. I'm going to do one of the roles. We got Wendell Pierce to do one of the roles. We got a guy named Keith David who's coming on to do one of the roles. And we're in the process of pulling together the cast right now, and we'll find some funding. And when it's probably a year, Sam and I are supposed to do a play on Broadway. Sam's supposed to do a play on Broadway, and I hope I'm in it, which is like a year from now. And we may find that his wife is going to direct, and we may find a moment after that in the spring of next year to take the 3 weeks to shoot this movie.
Okay.
So keep your eyes and ears peeled for that. Yeah.
I sure will. I'm happy I got to hear about it first. I got to hear about it early.
An American Son, man. I don't know if you've seen that on Netflix.
I have not. I will watch it most definitely.
Change your life. Change your life. Kerry Washington, you know who that is?
Yes.
From Scandal. Mm-hmm. And myself and Jeremy Jordan and Stephen Pasquale, 4 of us. We did the play on Broadway. Kenny Leon directed it, and we made the movie for Netflix. But it's a really important film for about a black mother, Carrie, who's in the Miami, Florida Police Department at headquarters at 3:00 in the morning, trying to find out what happened with her son, who was stopped by the police last night. Her 18-year-old son. And that's all I'll tell you. But you got to watch the movie.
I promise I will. I'll let you know what I think about it. I'll text you.
No, I know you will. If you watch this movie, we were nominated for an Emmy. It's really an important film, man. I'm so proud to have been a part of that. I can't say it enough. So that's the last shameless self-plug I'll make.
Well, again, thank you so much for your time. I had a blast just being able to listen and heed your wisdom. So I'm very grateful.
Thank you. Can I ask you something, man?
Yes.
And can I say something? Where are you from?
I am originally from New York, upstate
Okay.
New York, and I've been in Texas 10 years. My parents got divorced, so I've been here for 10 years.
Okay. All right. Well, let me just say, man, I appreciate you. I appreciate your maturity. I appreciate how sharp you are. I appreciate everything you brought to this occasion, because I've been interviewed by a couple of other people with this University Star place, and it was oftentimes a disappointment.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
No, it really was, man. And I do appreciate, I appreciate that you're a brother. I appreciate your intelligence, your perception. I appreciate you. I thank you, man. This was good. It was good for me. It was good for you. It was good for me too.
Thank you so much. That's it's one of the best compliments I've ever received, and I'll never forget it. Thank you so much.
I mean it, man. And anything you need other than money, call.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm gonna end it now. Thank you so much for watching the Star Sit Down. Be sure to follow our Instagram at Star Podcasting. I'll see you next Friday. Bye.
Peace out.